There's a lesson that life teaches almost everyone, but unfortunately, it's usually wrapped in pain. It's not the kind of lesson you learn in a classroom or from reading a book. It's the kind that arrives right after betrayal, disappointment, and heartbreak. It comes after you discover that the people you trusted most were not nearly as invested in your well-being as you believed. It's a difficult realization because it forces you to look beyond people's words and begin judging them by something more reliable. What is that? It's their actions. Most of us grow up believing that friendship is measured by laughter, shared memories, and good times. We think that because someone smiles with us, celebrates our victories, eats at our table, or calls us family, they must also have our best interests at heart. It is a comforting belief because it makes relationships feel safe. Unfortunately, life has a way of exposing the difference between people who simply enjoy your company and those who are genuinely committed to your welfare. The two are not always the same. One of the hardest truths to accept is that some people enjoy being close enough to benefit from your kindness without ever accepting the responsibility that real friendship requires. They appreciate your generosity. They welcome your advice. They accept your loyalty without hesitation. Yet when the moment arrives for them to demonstrate that same loyalty toward you, they suddenly become silent observers instead of faithful friends. That silence often reveals more about their character than anything they could ever say. But let me be clear from the beginning, because this distinction matters. I'm not talking about idle gossip or people who run around spreading everyone's personal business. Wisdom knows the difference between careless rumor and meaningful protection. Not every conversation deserves to be repeated, and not every piece of information needs to be shared. Mature people understand discretion. They understand timing. They understand that some matters should be private and remain that way. But there's another kind of silence that cannot be excused so easily. It's the silence of someone who watches danger moving toward your life, recognizes what's happening, and chooses to say absolutely nothing. They see the trap being prepared. They hear the conversations taking place behind your back. They recognize the deception that is unfolding around you. Yet, they decide that remaining comfortable is more important than helping you stay protected. That kind of silence is not neutrality. It's betrayal that simply refuses to announce itself. One of the greatest misunderstandings about loyalty is that many people believe it's demonstrated during celebrations. They assume loyalty is cheering for your accomplishments, liking your social media posts, complimenting your work, or speaking highly of you when everything is going well. While those things certainly have their place, they require very little sacrifice. Almost anyone can applaud another person's success when there is no personal cost involved. True loyalty reveals itself under very different circumstances. It appears when speaking the truth may create an uncomfortable conversation. It appears when protecting someone means risking your own convenience. It appears when remaining silent would be easier than stepping forward. That is where character begins separating itself from performance. A genuine friend does not enjoy watching you walk into unnecessary pain. If they become aware of something that could seriously affect your life, they do not sit back hoping someone else will handle it. They find an appropriate way to bring it to your attention with wisdom, compassion, and respect. They are not motivated by drama. They are motivated by concern. They understand that information, when offered with integrity, can become protection. The opposite is equally revealing. A person who repeatedly watches danger approach your life while convincing themselves that staying silent keeps their hands clean is making a decision. Silence is still a choice. Refusing to act when you possess the ability to prevent unnecessary harm carries its own moral weight. There are moments in life when saying nothing becomes its own form of participation. This is one of the most disturbing realities we encounter as we mature. Not everyone who smiles in your face wants to see you succeed. Some people enjoy proximity because it gives them a better view of your struggles. They laugh with you while quietly hoping your next chapter ends in disappointment. They celebrate your victories publicly while privately wondering how long your happiness will last. They become emotionally invested in your setbacks because your pain temporarily distracts them from confronting their own. That might sound harsh, but life eventually introduces all of us to people whose emotional health depends on comparing themselves to others. Instead of finding fulfillment through personal growth, they measure their value by someone else's failures. As long as your life appears more difficult than theirs, they feel strangely comforted. Your hardships become emotional medicine for insecurities they have never taken the time to heal. This explains why certain people seem strangely energized whenever misfortune enters your life. They may not openly celebrate it, but they become unusually interested. They ask questions that seem caring on the surface, yet something about their curiosity feels different. They want updates. They want details. They want to know how badly you were hurt. They quietly collect information while offering very little genuine support in return. Healthy people respond to another person's suffering with compassion. Unhealthy people respond with fascination. That difference is subtle, but once you learn to recognize it, it becomes impossible to ignore. As life continues teaching us these lessons, one truth becomes increasingly clear. Your greatest protection will never come from having the largest circle of friends. It'll come from developing the wisdom to recognize who truly belongs in your life. We live in a culture that often celebrates popularity, but popularity and loyalty have never been the same thing. A crowded room is meaningless if the people inside it remain silent while your life falls apart. Discernment allows you to look beyond personalities and begin evaluating patterns. It teaches you to pay attention to consistency instead of charisma. Some people possess magnetic personalities that attract everyone around them, yet leave a trail of broken trust wherever they go. Others may be quiet, humble, and rarely seek attention, but when your life enters a difficult season, they become the first ones standing beside you. Character is not always loud. In fact, it is often remarkably quiet. This is why I've become less impressed by words over the years and far more interested in repeated behavior. Promises are easy to make. Loyalty is much harder to practice. Anyone can call you brother or sister when life is comfortable. The real question is whether those same people will value your well-being enough to speak difficult truths when silence would be easier. The older I become, the more convinced I am that discernment is one of the greatest gifts a person can develop. It protects your heart without making it hard. It teaches caution without creating paranoia. It allows you to love people while also recognizing that love should never require you to ignore clear warning signs. That balance is not weakness. It's wisdom earned through experience. One of the most expensive mistakes we make in life is confusing access with loyalty. Just because someone is close enough to know your dreams, your fears, your routines, and your private struggles does not automatically mean they have your best interest at heart. Proximity and faithfulness are not the same thing. We remember conversations, shared experiences, and moments that seemed sincere, only to realize that while we were building trust, someone else was simply building access. The difference between those two things is enormous. One is built on love, the other is built on opportunity. For that reason, I believe every person should periodically examine the relationships surrounding their life. Ask yourself a simple question. If I were walking toward danger that I could not see, who among the people closest to me would care enough to stop me? The answer to that question often tells you far more about your circle than years of casual friendship ever could. There are moments in every relationship when doing the right thing requires courage. It may require an uncomfortable conversation, a difficult warning, or the willingness to risk temporary misunderstanding in order to prevent lasting harm. Those moments reveal the true character of a person because they force them to choose between comfort and conviction. Unfortunately, many people choose comfort every single time. They tell themselves that what happens is none of their business. They convince themselves that staying quiet keeps them out of trouble. They avoid difficult conversations because they fear being criticized or misunderstood. On the surface, their silence appears harmless, but beneath that silence is often a decision to protect themselves while someone else unknowingly walks into avoidable pain. Real friendship has never been built upon convenience. It has always required courage. A genuine friend values your well-being more than they value a few moments of awkwardness. They understand that temporary discomfort is a small price to pay if it helps protect someone they genuinely care about. They would rather risk you becoming upset for a day than watch you suffer for years because they refused to speak when it mattered the most. That's why I have come to believe, seriously, that courage is one of the greatest expressions of love. It's easy to flatter someone. It's easy to agree with everything they say. It's easy to avoid difficult conversations, but it takes integrity to lovingly say, I think you need to know something because I care about what happens to you. That kind of honesty may not always be welcomed in the moment, but it is often appreciated in the long run. It's one thing to learn that someone lied to you. It's something entirely different to realize that others watched it happen and quietly stepped aside. The pain is no longer limited to one person's deception. It expands to include everyone who had the opportunity to help but chose not to. Many people never fully recover from that kind of discovery because it changes the way they see relationships. Suddenly, They begin replaying old conversations through a different lens. They remember subtle expressions, unusual silences, and moments that once seemed insignificant but now make perfect sense. What they originally dismissed as coincidence slowly begins to reveal itself as a pattern. That experience can easily harden the heart if we're not careful. We may become tempted to believe that no one can ever be trusted again. We may convince ourselves that isolation is the safest place to live. While those feelings are understandable, they're not healthy places to remain. They're not. Betrayal should increase our wisdom, not destroy our ability to love. There's an important difference between becoming guarded and becoming bitter. Guarded people use discernment to protect their peace while remaining open to healthy relationships. Bitter people close every door because one person walked through the wrong one. Wisdom teaches us to strengthen our boundaries without imprisoning our hearts. One of the greatest misunderstandings surrounding discernment is that many people confuse it with suspicion. They assume that becoming more careful means becoming fearful of everyone. Nothing could be further from the truth. Paranoia sees enemies everywhere. Discernment simply asks for clarity before placing trust where it has not yet been earned. A discerning person does not spend every waking moment expecting betrayal. They simply pay attention. They notice repeated behavior instead of isolated incidents. They recognize that character is revealed through consistency rather than impressive speeches. They understand that people eventually tell you who they are, not only through their words, but through the patterns they repeat over time. One of life's greatest teachers is repetition. Almost anyone can pretend for a day. Many can pretend for a month. Some can even maintain a convincing performance for years. But eventually, pressure removes the mask. Difficult seasons expose priorities. Challenges reveal motives. Time uncovers what appearances work so hard to conceal. That's why I encourage people to slow down before placing complete trust in anyone. Observe how they treat people who cannot benefit them. Watch how they handle confidential information. Pay attention to whether they celebrate your success or quietly compete with it. Notice whether they disappear during difficult seasons or become more dependable when life becomes challenging. These patterns rarely lie. There are seasons in life when relationships begin changing for reasons we cannot immediately explain. Conversations become less frequent. Invitations slowly disappear. Certain people drift away without dramatic confrontation. Our first instinct is often to chase the relationship, wondering what we did wrong or how we can restore what once existed. With maturity comes a different perspective. Not every separation is a punishment. Some separations are protection. There are people who were never meant to accompany you into the next chapter of your life. Their assignment ended long before you realized it. Holding on to them beyond that point would only delay your own growth. What feels like rejection today may eventually reveal itself as divine redirection. Looking back, many of us can identify relationships we once fought desperately to preserve, only to realize later that their departure became one of the greatest blessings ever received. Sometimes distance allows hidden motives to become visible. Sometimes absence exposes a lack of genuine care that constant proximity had concealed. Sometimes The very people we feared losing were quietly preventing us from becoming who we were created to be. For that reason, I have learned to stop forcing doors open that continue closing on their own. If someone consistently demonstrates that they cannot be trusted with your peace, your purpose, or your well-being, believe the lesson instead of arguing with it. Protecting your future sometimes requires releasing people whose presence has become more harmful than helpful. As I bring these thoughts to a close, I want to leave you with something that I believe is desperately needed in a world where trust has become increasingly fragile. Never allow betrayal to convince you that everyone is your enemy. That mindset gives your past wounds too much authority over your future. Instead, allow painful experiences to sharpen your discernment while preserving your capacity to love the right people when they appear. Do not measure friendship by the number of people who surround you during moments of celebration. Measure it by the people who quietly protect your name when you are not in the room. Measure it by those who refuse to let you walk blindly into danger simply because speaking up might inconvenience them. Loyalty has never depended on grand speeches. More often than not, it reveals itself through small acts of courage that no one else ever notices. As I have continued walking through this journey called life, I have become convinced that one sincere friend is worth more than 1,000 comfortable acquaintances. Genuine loyalty cannot be purchased, manipulated, or demanded. It's demonstrated through consistent character over time. When you find people who value your well-being as much as their own comfort, treasure those relationships because they're becoming increasingly rare. At the same time, never ignore the quiet warnings that life places in front of you. Pay attention when someone's actions consistently contradict their words. Do not dismiss repeated patterns simply because you enjoy someone's personality. Charm has fooled many people, but character rarely does. Learn to trust what repeated behavior is teaching you, even when your emotions want to believe otherwise. My prayer today is not simply that your life will be filled with blessings. It's that you will be surrounded by people who celebrate your victories, protect your reputation, warn you when danger is near, and value your purpose enough to speak difficult truths when they matter most. May every hidden trap lose its power before it reaches your path. May every false relationship reveal itself before it has the opportunity to wound you. And may your discernment continue to grow until you no longer judge people by the beauty of their words, but by the consistency of their character. That kind of wisdom will protect not only your heart, but also the future you've worked so hard to build. As I close these thoughts, I want you to remember something that took me years to fully understand. The greatest danger in life is not always the person who openly declares themselves to be your enemy. At least, with an obvious enemy, you know where you stand. The greater danger often comes wrapped in familiarity. It comes from people who've learned your routines, gained your confidence, shared your laughter, and earned your trust, all while quietly refusing to protect you when it mattered most. Those are the experiences that leave the deepest scars because they force you to question not only other people, but your own judgment. Never allow those painful experiences to make you cynical. There's a tremendous difference between becoming wise and becoming bitter. Bitterness builds walls around the heart until no one can enter. Wisdom simply builds gates and becomes more careful about who receives the key. You can still love people without giving everyone unlimited access to your life. You can still believe in goodness while recognizing that not everyone deserves the same level of trust. That balance is one of the greatest forms of emotional maturity a person can develop. As I continue moving through this journey, my prayers have changed. I no longer ask only for open doors and greater opportunities. I ask for clearer vision. I ask for discernment that sees beyond appearances. I ask for the courage to accept uncomfortable truths even when they involve people I genuinely care about. Most of all, I ask for the wisdom to recognize the difference between those who merely enjoy my presence and those who are truly committed to my protection. That distinction has become more valuable than almost anything else. Trust and believe. If you take nothing else away from these words, remember this one simple truth. Real loyalty is never measured by who applauds you when life is easy. It's measured by who quietly stands guard over your well-being when there is nothing to gain from doing so. The people who genuinely love you will not sit comfortably while they watch danger moving toward your life. They may not always have every answer, but they will never make your suffering into silent entertainment. So as you continue walking your own path, protect your heart without hardening it. Treasure genuine loyalty when you find it, but never ignore repeated patterns that tell a different story. Allow every painful lesson to sharpen your discernment instead of stealing your compassion. Trust that what is hidden will eventually be revealed. What is false will eventually collapse under its own weight, and what is real will remain standing long after appearances have faded away. In the end, your greatest protection will not come from having the largest circle of people around you. It will come from having the wisdom to recognize who truly belongs within it. Once you understand that, life becomes so much easier. But different people have different ways of developing and different speeds of developing, and sometimes it takes them many years to understand who truly is around them. It takes time. Some get it quicker, some get it after a while. But hopefully you don't maintain or catch any scars from the insincere people who may be in your midst. Anyway, I want to thank you for being here with me all of this time and listening to what my thoughts were as they flowed. I hope you got something out of this. I'm on to the next one. Lance Curve out. I love you all. Peace.